Hey everyone, welcome to Social with a Side of Justice, the podcast where we talk about real issues that impact our communities.
This season, we're focusing on mental health and why getting help isn't always easy.
We're looking at the challenges people face when trying to get the support they need.
From stigma and high costs to policy gaps and unequal access in different communities.
Throughout this season, we'll be speaking with local mental health professionals to better understand how care works, what barriers exist, and what can be done to improve access.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Social with a Side of Justice. I'm Yamilet.
I'm Angeline.
And I'm Maria Eduarda, and we'll be your host for today's episode.
Let's get started with the basics. What is the difference between mental health and mental illness, and what does access to care really mean?
So basically, mental health includes just our general well-being. It includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And all of that affects how we think, how we feel, act, handle stress, and how we make choices in our everyday lives.
Yeah, and so mental illness would be the emotional and psychological and social well-being. It refers to the condition that alters a person's thinking, mood, behavior, and their disruptive impact on their daily life.
When we talk about access to care, we're referring to being able to receive the medical and mental health services someone needs.
Right, which includes things like health insurance, therapy, counseling, and so many more support services that would promote mental wellness for everyone.
Unfortunately, a lot of the time, high schoolers are afraid to ask for help. They're afraid of how they're going to get viewed. They're afraid of their image.
And that also includes not having the financial resources to afford care, because a lot of the time services aren't covered under certain insurance plans. Again, we're referring to high schoolers a lot of the time, and high schoolers may not have the means to pay for these services themselves, and they may be afraid to reach out to people who can help them get access to these services.
Yeah, and stigma plays a major role in this because even if someone realizes they need help, they might not always get the help with the fear of being judged or labeled as something.
Yeah, because as we've seen, historically, there's been so many, stigmas and stereotypes about mental health and more so, mental illness. People can be afraid of, if they come out and, are diagnosed with a mental illness, people are afraid of being seen as weak, dramatic, or even dangerous because these are all very often untrue and harmful stereotypes about mental illness. And they've really just made mental illness seem like something that people need to hide rather than get treatment and help for.
When we talk about adolescents and just teenagers, the youth in general, it's easy to connect it to social media. I feel like a lot of the time it's in our daily use. We're using it all the time. And so this media often reinforces the stigma. It reinforces, the idea that maybe we should be straying away from getting help because we're going to be seen as weak. So it reinforces the stigma and honestly sometimes even spreads misinformation and creates an environment that may be not as safe.
And I also feel like something that's very dangerous about social media is that we control what we post on social media and others choose what we want seen on social media. So a lot of the time we may be afraid to get help because if we're on social media, not only are we seeing misinformation, but also we're seeing this person is living a great life. This person's able to handle their stress or just the act of comparing ourselves to others on social media can be so harmful to us and our own well-being, and also Maria was saying our willingness, I guess, to reach out for help.
I agree, and I feel like if we look up to somebody, sometimes we just kind of go based off of what they look like and what stuff like that. So even if they relate to us in a sense, we're kind of oh, I'm going to try to live like them because that's what they're going through. And what sucks about this sometimes is even if someone overcomes that stigma and they realize they need the help, the access to care, it kind of puts a dent in it because then they don't have something to go to, something to reach out to. They don't they don't have anywhere to go. Even if they realize, hey, you know what, I've been struggling with this, I need help. They don't have a person to lean on and say, hey, Maria, can you help me with this? They don't have that person. They don't have that access.
Yeah, and when we're talking about like you were just saying, lack of access is something that's so harmful, but also something that's really common, unfortunately. And it's even it's just so sad to see because in recent years we've seen like anxiety and depression rates among so many like other mental illnesses, but anxiety and depression rates have increased like significantly among youth and among like high schoolers like us. And even though we've been seeing this like growing need and like growing issue, access to care is still limited and it's unequal, which like is affected by so many factors. But again, like there's this like dire need and we just see no action being taken.
Yeah, and this all brings us to a really important concept, which is what is equity in mental health?
Equity means making sure people get the specific support they need based on their circumstance.
And the difference between this and equality is that equality gives everyone the same resources, but equity recognizes that not everybody starts from the same place. So it would give like tailored resources to communities that don't have as much.
Yeah, it's very similar to, I don't know, like a lot of classes with social issues and stuff, they'll show you a picture. It's like giving people maybe like, for example, with the height difference, all the same ladder. That would be equality. Equity is making sure that we have that ladder tailored so that everyone can see the same view. And it might not be the same resources, but they're similar. And so we know that certain communities will face greater barriers. You're not going to face the same issues that I face. So it's really important that we give the level of care that's needed based on the circumstance. In mental health, equity looks like a culturally component care, affordable services, language to access, transportation options, and providers who understand the communities that they're specifically serving.
Yeah, and without equity, certain groups, especially like low income or communities with people of color, may just receive something that they don't need, honestly. And it just is kind of like what Angelin said, tailored to that specific group. And it's like you can't give something to someone. Like you can, if, for example, if someone comes in with the flu, you can't give them something for a headache. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. So
And like you brought up a good point about like low income and communities of color and like adding on to that, like these communities are usually the most vulnerable to suffering from like mental illness. And like in addition to that, because we're talking about a lot of very important factors, it's also really important to look at how mental health stigma and care have changed over the years. Because as we recognize, like we see that there's so many factors that play into mental health. And fortunately, we have seen like a start in progress like over the years.
Yeah, mental health obviously is ever changing, like most things are, but in the past it's been very stigmatized, and even now there's a lot of stereotypes where it's like, oh, like it's not something to be talked about, it's something you keep private. So in the past it was very misunderstood and heavily stigmatized.
today, at least, we see more awareness in the community. In schools, we have school-based programs, and there's more open discussion on social media. Going back to the social media, it can be harmful, but it can also be useful because there's people who talk about their problems, and you see them, and you're like, wow, like, you know what? They're going through the same thing I'm going through. So as it could be harmful, it could also be very good in helping someone.
Yeah, and like thankfully we have seen like progress over the years with, like you said, kind of more acceptance and awareness. But even though we have seen like improvement in awareness, stigma hasn't completely disappeared. And a lot of people, unfortunately, still fear judgment. And there's still not like equal access to quality care.
Yeah, so while progress has been made, it's very important that we understand that health care and understanding mental illness and mental disorders and how to treat it is very important and still prevalent. It's very important that we find something that's equitable rather than just equality.
It's amazing how conversations like this is it's a step forward to that change in the community and around everywhere around.
Yeah, I agree. It's super important to like talk about these things, especially when they're issues that like have been like significantly impactful towards our communities. And it's so important to recognize that mental health is health and that everybody deserves equal support.
We hope today's conversation helped you think differently, learn something new, or feel more connected to the issue of mental health and access to care.
Join us next time as we continue the conversation.
Because justice starts with understanding and change starts with conversation.
If you or someone you know is struggling, you're not alone.
You can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline anytime. It's free, confidential, and available 24/7.